Welcome again to Leadership in Legal Live. My name is Steve Lois. My co-host James Reed.
Pleasure to be here.
And we have a special guest today. Sharon, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you?
So I'm a business owner in Ann Arbor, and I own College Nannies, Tutors, and Tutors, and we support families from cradle to college, as well as supporting businesses with backup care. I'm also the MISHRM Foundation Director for MISHRM.
So that was what I was getting at, because you not only are you an entrepreneur, you're an HR professional.
Absolutely.
Or recovering HR professional.
Yes.
But thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. James and I try to have a guest on either every other session.
And not that we track it, but you're the first woman that we've had on the show.
That's right.
Trailblazer.
Hey, I didn't even think about that. James.
Right.
That's actually good. Thank you for joining us. And,
Right.
and as you guys, this is going to be an interesting conversation, because as all of you who are watching know, I mean, the whole point of this. So this Clubhouse thing is I can hear myself on one of our phones. I'm not sure which one. We're still trying to figure this thing out. Anyways, so the whole point of Leadership in Legal Live is to answer your questions, and we don't script these questions. We don't script the answers. James and Sharon, you got the questions that we had delivered to us like a half hour ago.
Exactly.
Right, that's it.
An hour ago. Usually I give you a little more warning, but the idea here is this is for senior HR leaders, and business leaders to ask those questions around anything leadership or legal, and HR sits right smack dab in the middle. So that's generally who our audience is. So I'm going to jump in and ask a couple of these easier questions.
So he says.
You're right.
It can go anywhere. Just
Okay.
keep that in mind.
Okay.
And as we say at the onset of every discussion, James, that we have, and Sharon, we just talked about this, we may not always agree.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think that's actually a good thing.
It is.
Healthy conflict, I call it.
Healthy conflict, and it helps us understand. We can't all see everything from the exact same perspective. We can't. It's impossible. I can't fit in your shoes. You can't fit in my shoes. So with that, ready?
Ready.
Let's go.
All right, here we go. Easy peasy. This is for you, James, because it's a
No
legal
pressure.
question. What's some of the biggest compliance issues employers need to be aware? Actually, this is for you too, because of what you do specifically. What are some of the biggest compliance issues employers need to be aware of with working from home? Employers creating a safe work environment, time and attendance, work hours, backup care, child care, all of that. What's some of the biggest issues legally, James?
Well, one is protecting confidential information.
Okay.
Two, you want to make sure that you're paying for all time worked, because now people are claiming they're checking emails at midnight or in the morning, and how are they tracking their time? And if they are entitled to overtime for those extra hours, how are you going to pay them that and comply with the law?
And control that.
And control that.
Yeah.
And the controlling actually, from a business owner point of view, is important, but legally it doesn't matter. If they work it and you said you weren't allowed to, you still legally have to pay it.
Even though you set the rule, said nothing over 40 or whatever the rule
That's
happens
right.
to be, you're still on the hook.
You're still on the hook. So most handbooks say you're not allowed to work overtime without manager approval. Doesn't matter. If they do it, you can write them up for violating a policy, but you can't say I'm not paying you.
You're still liable.
You're still liable.
For whatever that is.
That's right. And then I'm hearing, more talks on are people drinking on the job, having recreational marijuana on the job, when their Zoom cameras are off, what are they really up to? And there's a lot of issues, maybe workers' comp if they're getting, injured at home, reimbursements for all these extra supplies and damage to equipment.
Is that required, reimbursement for all these extra supplies when you're working from home?
In most states, it's not required.
What about Michigan?
Michigan, it's not required.
Okay.
But if your business costs make you get less than minimum wage, so like at the end of the day, you're not earning at least minimum wage, then it would be required to that extent.
But that's probably not the case for most people working from home. I'm guessing they're over that, the minimum wage.
Correct. That issue is probably rare to come up. And there's some experts saying they're saving money, business costs, by staying at home, no more commute,
Sure.
And all these other ways to save money.
I'm not paying for gas. I'm not
Dry
paying for
cleaning,
else is.
whatever,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, dry cleaning. I mean, you're wearing a suit, but
Right.
I don't know when's the last time I actually wore a suit.
Don't have to, right?
Right.
But your business is a little different, Sharon. When you think about the shift, because you provide care,
Right.
through your organization. How has that changed from whether it's a compliance perspective or just the way you operate?
It has changed because of COVID.
Yeah.
Right? We're following the CDC guidelines, but guess what? We can't socially distance from babies.
Because you're taking care
We're
of...
taking care of them, right?
Right.
So we have to be extremely cautious,
Yeah.
right? Most of our employees have gotten their first shot. Some have gotten their second shot. We're sharing that with our families. Families are asking, how are you keeping your employees safe? And we're spending more consultation time than we ever have with families.
So you're doing some of this at home now, right?
Yes.
In the individual's
we are
homes.
in everyone's home.
Yeah.
Yes.
So So can I ask this question?
Yeah, ask
And
it.
my attorney's here. So if I can't, are you requiring your team to get COVID shots, given what you do?
No.
You're not.
We are strongly encouraging them
Okay.
for their safety as well as the folks that they interact with
Okay.
every day.
Are you having people request only caregivers with COVID shots?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And our employees know that as well. So I have created an opportunity for them to all get COVID vaccines. They don't have to go and get it themselves. I'm scheduling it for them.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, and making it as convenient as possible and trying to answer all their questions about, taking this vaccine and what does this mean for me and my family. And so we are doing all that we can to keep everybody safe. And thank goodness we haven't had any issues.
But you're not doing take it or you're fired.
Yes. Oh, no.
Are you giving incentives such as I'll give you this extra PTO day if you have side effects from the vaccination or stuff like
We are
that?
paying for them to go. They're going on unscheduled work hours, right? So
Good.
that
Yep.
we can
Good.
take care of
Yep. Yep.
our families. They're going on Saturdays, and if they have any reactions, they're getting paid for that. If they have any reactions, they are getting paid for that time. Absolutely.
So we're going to go a little out of order because
Yeah,
it
sure.
came up.
Okay.
The legalities of requiring somebody to take it or firing them. What are the legalities of that?
So legally, you can require it. The only exception is the religion or disability. So, which I'm not currently aware of very many that would fall under one of those two buckets. However, many companies and some other lawyers are saying it's illegal to require it because it's not available readily to many employees. So how can you fire me for something that I can't even access if I wanted to? So it's not in Wayne County, and there's some other ways to have access, but it's still not readily available to most employees.
So let's think about that here for a second, because one of the questions that related to this was the story about the waitress who was recently terminated because she didn't take the COVID vaccine because she was trying to get pregnant. And if you read the entire story, it was, these vaccines only have emergency use. They are not technically completely approved by the FDA or Drug Administration or whatever it is. So is it the right thing to force? I get what you're doing it, I think, the right way. Here's the option. You want to do it? Do it. But is it not legally? What do you guys think? Is it the right thing to force somebody to do it or tell them to get the heck out, given where things are?
I think that it would only potentially be the right thing in certain niche areas like high-risk medical hospital situations where
At-home care with babies.
it would be a lot more necessary than a restaurant,
Yeah.
let's say. But what's shocking is I've read many cases where medical beliefs are not a protected class. So for that claim to actually prevail, to say medically I'm concerned about issues, that is not a employment protected class. Maybe she'll have a claim against whoever provides the vaccine.
But she won't be able to go after the employer.
The only way to go after the employer would be more creative. You are discriminating against women somehow, and women are the only ones that have babies and the side effects of babies, and that would be a harder argument to make. It's not as direct.
Got it. Yeah, you're in a tough spot given what you guys do, but I'm glad that you're making that available so you can keep caring for these kids that are at home.
Absolutely. Families need us more now than ever, right?
Yeah.
Because kids are still home, some of them, because they can't go to school yet, one school district that James and I know very well, kids are still home.
Yeah.
Right? So it's important for us to be able to help them and for them to feel confident that we can keep their family safe. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I got an interesting conversation with a friend of mine who's also an entrepreneur, but he's made it mandatory. He said, if you don't do this, you're not only are you not working, you're not working for us at all anymore. And we've had policy until the government forces my hand that says you all have to take it. I've had the policy, it's your choice. If you want to take it, please take it. If you don't want to take it, I respect your commitment to not taking it for your own reasons, regardless of what those reasons are. So yeah, I get a little pushback on that right now, given all the hubbub about it. But I still think it's your decision, depending on the circumstances. Because I do get the situation of, like, if you're caring for babies or seniors, you're doing it more for them, I think, than you are for yourself.
I agree.
Right.
I actually got the vaccination, and I did it for. I wasn't worried about myself. I did it for others that I may come across.
Yeah, I haven't gotten it.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm keeping my distance away from you guys a little
But
bit.
I have, so two out of three.
But I'm pretty certain I had it last January. My wife and I had it. So I'm not.
Although they say that you're not immune forever, right?
I get. Anyways, so it's funny how that kind of plays in, because working from home, COVID. That's why we're having the work from home discussion in the first place. I'm gonna switch gears a little bit and come back to the second COVID question. But under this work from home idea, the issue of culture keeps happening. And there's legal issues, there's leadership issues, there's HR issues. But the question was, how do you maintain or even create culture when so many people are working remote, they're out of your office, you can't see them every day? What do you do?
I had an hour discussion on this yesterday, actually, with Tina Marie at HR Unite group together. And they were saying that we shouldn't just be focused on how to fix it. What the hard part is, we don't fully understand the diagnosis as to what the cultural problem is. It may be more than just not seeing everybody. So before we try to find the solution, we might need to do a little deeper dive investigation as to what those issues are. And one primary theme is the silo effect, where you're only having Zoom meetings in your siloed group.
Yeah.
And so these silos are connecting and you lose touch with all the other silos. And I think to fix that, you're going to have to create some type of committee, like a continuous improvement committee. I see at a lot of companies where you can have one person from each silo share ideas and have some level of understanding of what's going on in different silos.
You've got these two hats. You've got HR professional, business owner, and now you're combining them too. What are you doing? How do you look at this particular issue around creating, maintaining, adding to the culture that you've created, and what advice would you give?
We are trying to have more fun. We always had fun, in person, and right now it's not allowed. So we are doing really cool things with our employees on Zoom. We're going to have a stress reducer here in April. We have a lot of college students on our team, so we're going to bring in someone to help them relax.
Like a yoga instructor almost?
Kind of.
Breathing, all
of those things.
All right.
So there are things that you can do to break down the silos, to add employees to be able to participate with one another. So what did you do before COVID? Can some of those things
be done electronically?
Yes.
Yeah.
And if they can, do them.
Yeah, two interesting perspectives. And one thing that you just mentioned that I want to bring up, and I use this term all the time, COVID was the great exaggerator. If you had a problem in your culture, it just got bigger. If you had a real strong culture, in some instances, I've seen people come together even more to support the organization. So I agree, you got to kind of get under the covers, so to speak, what the heck is going on. But I do agree, and we've done the same thing in our organization. We've taken some of those, we used to do quarterly events, and then we're doing monthly events, and we're just digitizing them, kind of like we're doing with MISHRM meetings.
Exactly.
We had the cocktail hour where somebody taught us how to make cocktails, and then of course we drank cocktails all from our living rooms. So you can do those kind of things. But I think the key is if you had a problem, the problem just got bigger, and go to the root. Don't deal with the symptom, what you think is COVID. Go to what was causing it in the first place. Right. Because one of these cool events that you do or we do or somebody else doesn't fix the problem.
No, it doesn't.
If there was a problem in the first place.
That's right. And a couple other comments. One, I think this is a great test of who's actively engaged, who's willing to step up to things that are not in their job description. We're finding that out. And I'm actually gaining trust with many people on my team realizing they get so much done on their own. You don't even need to necessarily check in and follow up to keep things moving.
It's done.
It's done.
Yes.
Yeah. Knowing which person needs what is really the key. Because
That's right.
you know, the attorneys that I deal with in your office, my guess is they don't need much from you.
No, they don't.
They just got to do their thing. But other individuals need a little more, you know, touch. That's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. That kind of that personal piece, that personal connection.
That's true. But although I think I'm almost all business a lot of the time on the assignments at work, and I feel like if they had mental depression or anxiety or whatever, I feel like they're not super comfortable sharing that with me. So if you were hanging out a little more, just you might be able to like notice something to then have that follow-up question or comment. Can I help you? Are you stressed out? Are you overwhelmed? You can sense it a little bit on the phone, but you don't exactly know what's going on in their life.
How do you do that, Sharon, with the team of mostly college students that are doing this, right? How do you you personally, as the owner of the business, stay connected with them?
I check in a lot.
Okay.
I check in a lot. And it's important to do that because they're in the field.
Yeah.
Right? So we will call, we text, we meet. I have team leaders who will work with our team as well so that it's not just me, but I think it's really important that we know them well. And because of what's happening right now, actually some of my employees are telling me more than I knew about them, right? So that could be a good thing or not.
Exactly.
Thing, right? But because they feel comfortable, and I think that's important also, they feel comfortable enough to talk to me. You know, that's amazing.
So I had a potential client call me yesterday, and he goes, "You won't believe it. My daughter was asked to take a survey on her mental health at work, and she said that she thinks about suicide daily and all of these things, and all of a sudden they force her on 60-day FMLA unpaid.
Oh, no kidding.
And she's like, "My daughter can lose her job. Can you represent us?" And she didn't know you can't be too honest with your employer. They don't want to know everything, and there's this whole kind of waterfall effect from that.
Well, what are the boundaries, right? I know what you can't ask. We all know what you can't ask. But if as you do, like I've had a lot of people here that have been with me for 15, 16, 17 years. We talk about, like we're friends.
Right.
Right.
I mean, after 16 years, 15 years, you're going to be friends with them. You can't hide from each other.
That's right.
But where's the boundary of employer-employee when somebody sometimes just needs a shoulder to, man, I'm not doing good today. What do you do? Legally, right now you can ask more questions than ever, but typically those surveys should be more anonymous, not direct to know the exact answers. But I think the employee is friends with these people, so talks to the social worker as a confidant and over discloses what's going on in their life. And I think legally, you only can focus on the job duties at hand. You can't factor in a disability. And depression is a disability in many times, especially depression may not be a disability during non-COVID, but if it's enhanced with COVID, it could be a temporary disability. And so you'd want to make sure if you were firing them, you're doing it through a committee that doesn't know all of that inside dirt. Got it.
And they'll agree that performance is not up to standards and there's no reasonable accommodation that you could offer to raise that performance. Because if there's a disability by law, you have to engage in the interactive process and explore a solution if they were having a workplace issue related to that disability. If it's unrelated, the issue, then you can take action appropriately.
Well, I don't know how you do it, Sharon, but we really encourage all of our leaders to have a very good relationship and a close relationship with all of their teams. So a lot of that stuff comes up because without crossing the legal line, we want to help them if we can, provide them with every support we can, or at least an ear to, or somebody to talk to, so to speak, without providing real guidance. We're not social workers, so we can't provide real guidance, but at least to be there. Do you guys do the same?
We absolutely do.
Yeah.
And it's just important to do that and provide them with resources, right?
Yeah.
That you can't necessarily take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And we want to know. Based on what we do, we need to know.
That's true, because because of the level of care.
Agreed, but the problem I see at many companies is they have a Sharon, like not at your level, but they have someone that they report to have that sympathetic ear
Yeah.
that allows them to then go back and finish their day knowing someone understood and heard them. But that person that hears it isn't interacting with HR or legal or their wellness and does nothing, and the problem happens again next week. So we got to train our leaders on how to report those issues to you or you so that you can make sure you're stopping it from happening to begin with, instead of just being that sympathetic ear.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a balance between the two right now
That's
because
right.
that's why you're here, right?
Yes.
Because I don't think about some of the legal. I just think about the person, and I know a lot of you are watching. You think about the person, but there's unfortunately we have to keep in mind the other side of things as well.
That's right.
So good conversation. All right, let's move really quickly to technology. I'm probably going to skip a few of these others because I do want to talk about some of the cultural questions that came up that you and I have addressed with some other guests as well, and I'd love to get your feedback on some of these things too. And they're pretty detailed questions, but they're kind of two general ones. One is Zoom fatigue is becoming an issue. Recommendations on how to avoid it, because everybody's on Zoom or Teams or WebEx or some version. What do you do to avoid the fatigue?
The challenge, it's a challenge, like for lawyers in many industries, there's a driving time gap between appointments. So I'm literally going from my 9 to 10 Zoom to my 10:01 to 11 Zoom. Yeah. So I can't even go to the bathroom some of the time. I'm like halfway, so like I think you gotta...
Too much information, James.
So I feel like part of it is that you have to have slight gaps in your schedule.
Agreed.
But you don't want to have such a light gap that you're 15 minutes twiddling your thumbs, can't get into something else because you're about to get ready for the next one. So it's definitely a balancing act. But there's an endurance involved. I think once you stop coming to the office grind, you're not used to giving 4 hours of direct all-in effort, and it's like a marathon. You got to start your training all over again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thoughts, Sharon?
It's not going away.
No.
Anytime soon, right? So having some breaks, like Jane mentioned, is really key. Do you have to be in the same spot having that Zoom meeting? Can you not stand up? Can you not go on a walk and have your Zoom meeting?
Take your phone.
Right. Absolutely. So try to mix it up as much as you can.
Well, one of the things that I found myself doing, and as I read this question a couple days ago, I'm like, dang it. I've created a situation where I use Zoom when I would have traditionally picked up the phone.
Yes.
So I'm doubling up the Zoom. I mean, I think we got to use Zoom or Teams to where you would have that one-on-one connection. But that's my natural default now. And not only am I getting fatigue, I think the other person, like one of my team members, is getting fatigue. It's like, Steve, you would have called me before. Why do you got to see me 8 times a day now on Zoom? And I think we're all so overboard. And I caught myself doing that.
Same. So Zoe actually called me out and said, James, do you know when you invite me for a Zoom meeting, I have to get dressed formally and spend an hour on my hair and makeup. If I could have just called you, that would have been 1 more hour of productive time I could have had in my day.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, good point. Let's just do Zoom once a week on Mondays. The rest just call cell phones and not stress out about it.
Yeah. I see a lot of that happening right now with the overzealousness with video.
Yeah. And cameras off.
Yeah.
Because they're not ready.
Right.
We kind of have a rule that if you're on camera, especially as a team, have your camera on.
Yeah.
We do want to see you at times, but I do think that's probably being overused too.
Yeah. Johnny Taylor said if you can see each other in the office, you should do it also at home. But I'm also at the point where if that's a perk now to you to not have to get fancied up, I'm willing to accommodate at times, especially if I already know you at a high trust level. Right.
Agreed.
So I'm going to put the next 2 technology questions kind of together.
Okay.
Kind of. So the first question was, how is digitization affecting HR? Is technology making us less human? But I'm going to add the second question. Can I use technology to surveil my employees? Can I surveil them while they're on video, on calls through their computer? Is this legal, or even should I be doing this? So kind of take both of those. One's broader, one's more narrow. You want to go first?
Why would you want to surveil your employees?
I'm not the person who wrote it.
I know. I mean, that's the first question that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, is there a trust factor?
Sure.
Hopefully not, because then there's some other things that you may need to deal with. But surveilling them, if you need to know that they're on the clock, I understand that with technology. But if you're really surveilling, like what I think of as surveilling, then...
Watching every keystroke.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like...
turning on their video from the
Yeah,
company provided
exactly.
computer.
How are you getting your work done as a manager? If you are, and you have a team, how can you get things done?
Yeah.
If that's what you're doing, or you have a technology person doing that all day.
Before I have you answer the legal side of this, what about the broader? How is technology changing, in your view, HR? Is it becoming less human because of what's going on with COVID and with technology, or more?
You know, I think if you're using it the right way, it gives you more time back in your day so that you can be more engaged with your employees, your teams, the managers that you may support if you're an HR leader. You know, use it
the right way.
The right way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I see a lot of folks replacing connection with technology. And that, I think, it's a slippery slope, because once you start going down that slope, man, it can be gone. But James, what about the legal perspective of this?
Yeah, so I actually have the opposite point of view. Is I think surveilling is almost necessary for every employer, because from my seat, as high as 90% of employees eventually bring claims against the company, and if we aren't using technology to keep track of how many hours they're working and what they're doing or not doing, and they claim they're working 80 hours a week the last 3 years and want back pay for 3 years and double pay and overtime. If I have no way at all to track what they're really doing, I'm setting myself up to a blank check.
Yes. Well, I totally agree. I totally agree with that, James. Absolutely.
Right. But as far as, you know, having a laptop, I see a lot of people, like, sometimes their office space is their bedroom. You see, like, the bed in the background, right? You can't access their camera when they...
Right.
There's an expectation of privacy, right, in bedrooms and bathrooms and certain things. But legally, you can essentially allow someone to access your camera and your audio and your computer wherever there's no expectation of privacy. And most handbooks say that you can be monitored and there's no expectation of privacy on any workplace equipment or laptops. But to actually go in and do it, I'm not aware of my clients that are actually at that level.
So I'm just, maybe this isn't even relevant, but I'm going to ask a question anyways. Let's say you're in a one-bedroom apartment, your spouse or significant other is out in the living room, you're in your bedroom. I really don't have any other place to be, and all of a sudden that expectation of privacy, I didn't know that that's the only room they have, and I've never done this, but if I click it on, I mean, now what happens?
So the tchotchke I ordered for this year is the little Dinsmore camera cover.
That's what we have.
Right.
Yes.
So if you want one, I'm happy to ship one out to you. But I would make sure you have a piece of paper or something that covers that camera to not have those inadvertent misses. Because I actually... someone actually in Ann Arbor did a Zoom meeting, thought it was over, and then started taking off their shirt and changing. And it was still streaming live.
Oh my gosh.
Wasn't there a CNN broadcaster that really did something he shouldn't have and got nailed?
Right?
Yes.
So I think that you want to find a way to turn off your microphone and your camera for best practices, even if you're not worried about a supervisor checking in.
Yeah, and use a panel, you know, so that if you are in your bedroom, no one needs to know that, because
put something behind you.
Right.
Yeah. Right. A green screen, something.
Yes.
I agree. I feel like the sexual harassment claim is almost like giving like the wrong impression.
Right.
And especially when there's these one-on-one meetings, it's almost like
awkward.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I would feel really uncomfortable if one of my team members, especially female, right, the opposite sex, was sitting in front of their bedroom and I'm doing a one-on-one. I would feel weird, man.
Yeah, like you can't even comment on it. It's like the elephant in the room that you have to pretend isn't there.
Yeah.
On that, the broader question though around technology affecting HR, I agree with you, Sharon. One of the things is, I think if you use it right, it actually enhances your ability to deliver HR services. Unfortunately, some HR professionals almost hide behind it, and they shouldn't. They don't need to, but they do. And I think it's having a negative. I think small percentage, but I still think it's having a negative impact on some folks when they're hiding behind technology.
Yeah. The downside of technology is that when the Department of Labor comes to your office and says, "Show me all the hours worked," and now they can get your timesheets for every minute, and you're paying 40 hours a week. Now you're handing them a liability card finding. Yeah. So that technology does hurt employers too.
Yes.
That's a good perspective,
right?
That I don't think about much at all. Luckily, I've never had a claim ever, but Knock on wood, right?
You don't want an audit
want it.
either.
What's shocking though is this is a good reminder to create your technology policy, what I call like your record retention policy, because when I'm involved in litigation, I check the key fob, and when you check in every day, Steve, it deletes every 90 days in most technology. And even with your cell phone and your keystrokes,
Really?
yeah, it recycles. So like a lot of companies, even your inbox, it moves stuff to archives.
Yeah.
And then like a lot of payroll companies, you can't even get the payroll records after a year. They go, I don't have those anymore. Or you switch payroll companies. And
Yeah.
so like you should figure out what you want your policies to be, because you don't want to have 10 years of stuff to have to produce to somebody someday in litigation.
No.
Yeah, you know what? I don't
Right.
even know what our key cards here. Not that it matters because everyone's at home now.
Yeah.
But I don't know what we do. We automatically archive as
Sure.
well. And once it hits a certain threshold, we delete all that crap anyway. But
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah,
that's
I know.
a good point.
I know one company, a law firm, that says if you don't save your emails to our archive in 30 days, they're gone forever.
Wow.
Like so, because they don't want to have to dig through emails for a decade.
All right, you ready for some interesting questions?
Yes, bring it.
I'm going to skip David. We're going to go to some of the cultural questions that we have. We're going to go in order because I mean I think these are things people are some afraid to talk about and sometimes it's more shouting than it is a conversation around it. So I'm going to go in order. Why does it seem that we're creating more and more employees with a victim mentality and not focused on some level of personal responsibility? And I'm not referring to one specific generation or racial group. So I don't know if that's a little bit of a rhetorical question, but let me say it again. Why does it seem that we're creating more and more employees with a victim's mentality and not focused on some level of personal responsibility? What's your gut reaction to that?
Wow.
Either one of you. Gut reaction to that statement or rhetorical question or what have you. This whole idea of creating more victim mentality in our teams.
That's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
You know, because I would want to know a little more. I mean, why is this person saying this?
Yeah.
What's happening in their culture, their workplace, for them to even think that this is happening? Who's saying that they're being victimized or they are having troubles with their teammate or something? You know, because
I don't know the answer to that here.
yeah,
I feel like I can understand the perspective, and
Yeah.
the reason for it is in the past years there's been the big BLM movement, LGBTQ, a new president that is very more pro-employee than the past president that was more pro-employer. So, and I think there's more education from all of the social media movements where employees are using buzzwords. If they thought that they didn't get enough raise or they got demeaning work, you discriminated, you bullied, harassed. They're using all these words without knowing the legal significance of those, or they're not taking accountability that maybe they should improve their performance, is that person's perspective. And I think that it's too easy to play victim because every one of us are part of multiple protected classes. So if our goal is to extort our situation, we can say it's because of my age, my family status, my marital status. And too many employees are not staying at the same company for 30 years anymore. I'm sure you see turnover.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's easy just to get a quick 10 grand severance and move on to your next gig. And I think that is what a lot of employees are doing. The all-time record lawsuits and claims in the past year.
Really?
Yeah.
I think that's probably where this is coming from. Again, I don't know. I can't get inside this person's head. I know who wrote it. They emailed it to me, so I'm actually going to ask her
Yeah.
what she thought, what she's talking about there. But it's probably something along those lines. It just seems like we've got this, and I don't want anybody to take this out of context, but it's a little bit of the woe is me instead of let's go fix this. Does that make sense at all?
It does.
Does that resonate at all?
I think there's a lot of employees that are bringing the problems. Like there's not enough minorities here, not enough women, not enough this, but they aren't at all identifying a solution.
Yeah.
Why didn't you refer some applicants that you know? You know what I mean? And I feel like they're playing like, poor me.
Yeah.
Well, help us.
Yeah, I think that's key in education, because that's what I was thinking when James was talking. It's like, are we educating our teams enough? Do we know what they're thinking, what's going on with them, so that we can try to eliminate or mitigate what could be coming?
Yeah, this particular person is I'm not using a name, so I'm not getting in trouble here, right?
Right.
She is a white female in her probably late 50s, early 60s. And I know a little bit of the context because I've had a one-off text. I was like, what? I don't know all of it. I can't get inside of her head, right? But it was a little bit of, she's in an environment where it actually goes to one of the other questions. She's not the one who asked the question, but it goes to, within their organization, they have created a gazillion affinity groups. Meaning, you know, for those that are African American, those that are, the organization she works for has a lot of Arabic people and so on. So they've got all these individual affinity groups that are getting all these extra advantages for being within the affinity group. In fact, they meet during regular hours. Well, she's not allowed to meet during regular hours with any kind of group. That's, I know a little bit of the contextual situation she's coming from. So what do we do about situations like that? Is that happening across the board? How do we address that? Because if one person's feeling that way, are 1,000 people feeling that way? And what should we be doing or not doing to address that if it was to come up? Just based on, this is an opinion conversation at this point. Not, I mean, I guess there's a legal implication, but
You know, legally quotas are illegal.
we've talked
Right,
about
we talked about that. But I think the perspective is that they're at a disadvantage being white or older or, you know, not a minority, essentially. And I'm getting plaintiff attorneys calling me saying, James, a 55-year-old CFO was just laid off. I don't know anything about this case yet, but it's a white male, and you know what's going on right now in this world. Can you pay him a year severance? So there is kind of this whole perception now that there's going to be, it's not just a improve the world, there's a pendulum swing. And are there going to be more claims brought by, you know, the white culture in 2021 than normal? And the answer appears to be probably yes.
what's your thoughts?
You know, with the different groups, I guess my question would be, if I was still in, you know, our corporate HR environment, everyone should have the opportunity to meet. You know, why just segregate certain groups? If they're allowed to meet during working hours, any group, any social
Should
group,
be able to.
absolutely. To me, that helps with equity right there.
That's actually a really good perspective.
Great perspective. And you're not breaking down barriers if you're keeping these silos. You
Right.
want to educate each other and understand different points of view.
Are we causing our organizations that are doing this? And I see there's some value to certain affinity groups. And I'm not just talking African American because you're sitting here, right? So I don't care what affinity group, LGBTQ, I don't care what it is. I think there's some value to having like-minded people at times. But to that second question that I kind of dumped in here, which says, I'm all for inclusion, but creating more affinity groups that separate us in the workplace seems to be counterproductive. What am I missing? I think there's a challenge here that we got to deal with, because I think the heart of why all these affinity groups that were created was the right thing. But in practicality, it seems to be causing more silos, like we were talking about, even from a business perspective.
Right.
That's coming from a middle-aged, bald white guy.
Right.
So let's keep that in the perspective, right? I don't know. What do you guys think about the kind of the general silo effect that seems to be going on, even when you look at movements that are out there for any racial group or any, not even racial group, a non-racial group, but it's a group of just people like us.
I think the perception is reality.
Yeah.
But I think the intent was good. And I saw like a YouTube video was pretty promising where it said, step forward if you've been divorced or you had, you know, you didn't have a father growing up. And the concept is everyone realizes all these different people are in the same group as them that they didn't know before. So the concept is we're all in it together. But it's not how it's playing out. The way the companies are doing these groups, it's separating people.
If Sharon, I want your comments on this, but if you're watching this and you have affinity groups in your organization and it's providing value, text me at 734-837-8500 with your comment, question, and if you want to come on and talk about it next time, I definitely want to have you on, because this is one that I really struggle with, because again, intent I think was right. It's kind of like, it's kind of like when unions first started, right? I thought unions, they first started to bring equality in pay and work environment and all of that. And then I wonder in some organizations as I watch, and I think there's still a place, but has it gotten overboard and beyond providing value and actually taking away from the community it's supposed to be serving? What's your thoughts?
Well, it sounds like it based on the email that you got, right? So if it's happening there, I'm sure it's happening in other organizations. And, I think we really need to look at it if you're in those organizations to make sure that your employees are feeling comfortable in the work environment. Have we surveyed them? How are they feeling?
Yeah.
Because if she feels this way in her organization, and I'm assuming she's an HR professional.
She is.
Okay, then you know that the employees are feeling that way.
And I think that's a big.
I think you got to err on the side of being more inclusive. And
yes, absolutely.
Right.
We need to do that.
So how do you have that conversation with you've got all these groups, and how do you have that conversation so you need to be more inclusive within your group? How do you do that?
But can you not have other groups, right, that brings all people together if they're interested in partaking? Maybe it's a committee about the next event that they can have when we're all back together, and you bring
doesn't matter what group you're affiliated with. Just bring everybody together.
Bring everybody together that's interested. I think that will help to break down the barriers and also reduce some anxiety that may be happening with employees in the workplace.
But by just, so I guess this is a question for both of you, by just having, even if you bring them all together at times, but by just having these individual siloed groups, does it continue to create, so, let's think about what's happening overall when it comes to BLM and now Asian hate and all this other stuff that's going on. Are we almost, and I'm not blaming it on groups, do not send me hate mail and say he's blaming it on groups. That is not what I'm doing. These are conversations that are coming up. Are we creating more of are we supporting what's going on almost by saying, let's just be inclusive in our own group? Yes, I want to have these other groups, but by having a group just for us that nobody else is allowed to come in, is that a good thing? I don't know.
It's an interesting perspective. So I attended the Michigan SHRM Blue Table Talk.
Yeah.
Were you there?
I was.
Okay. And this concept came up about the groups, and basically the concept was if HR or other people are having these groups, all of this is almost irrelevant and doesn't make any difference or matter. It's almost for a show to the public. In order to fix your culture and company, you got to start with the CEO. I won't even attend the conversation if the CEO is the CEO in all these meetings and all these groups, and if the CEO and the leadership isn't changing, what's the point of going through the dog and pony show? So that was kind of the takeaway I saw in that chat room. And so I think the answer to that question is, what's the CEO's view? Is he kind of passing it down to lower level people to run the dog and pony show? Or is the CEO, he or she, or doesn't want to identify, are they taking control of the culture?
That's actually, that's an interesting perspective on that. What are your thoughts on the whole thing? Any kind of other thoughts?
Well, is it important? Right?
Right. Is it important?
Because if it is, then that leadership team will certainly communicate that. They will certainly participate. They will certainly provide resources, right? Financial, put your money up for it if you really think it's important. But yeah, if the leadership doesn't support it, then yeah, it is just a group that really doesn't mean much to that organization.
Yeah, admittedly, my perspective is different from yours, from David's, who's our camera guy, just because we were raised differently, we lived in different areas, we with all these different things that are going on. But as from a CEO perspective, I look at it and say, the minute I sanction, and this is only one guy, middle-aged white guy, I get it, right? But the minute I say it's okay to have your group, I'm almost marginalizing your group. I would rather say, I want you all to come together, and I want us to all talk about our differences, because we got them. Let's embrace the fact that we have different perspectives, not just put you in groups based on skin color or any other affinity, which I think is somewhat not the right thing. It's one guy's perspective. But I'd love to get your feedback on this, and bring them all together to work through, not separate them to be teams against each other. That's my perspective. Simplified, simplistic, I get it.
No, I understand your perspective. I think different companies are, number one, different sizes. So in Dinsmore, we have, over 1,200 employees. So we do have, different groups, but I think there's a constant theme where we can accomplish more together and all come together. So I don't think, and it's not exclusive. So like the LGBTQ affinity group, anyone can participate, and they actually encourage everyone to identify their gender pronouns, regardless if you're part of any protected class or not, because it makes everyone more comfortable just sharing their point of view.
Any final thoughts on that from your perspective, Sharon?
It's challenging. From a personal perspective, being a business owner, I don't participate in groups that are just for Black people, okay? Like the Black Chamber of Commerce, for an example. I don't participate in groups like that because we need to be more inclusive. We totally need to be.
Yeah, I would see that as, I want to belong to a chamber. Let's say it's entrepreneurs like the three. Well, you're an entrepreneur too.
Yes, absolutely.
You are actually in this group, even though we have different backgrounds and all that. It's like it's for all of us because we come at it from different perspectives, but we all look at it differently. All of our challenges. So I'm with you on that one. Thank you for sharing that. By the way,
absolutely.
And I'm not saying anybody who is going to the Black Chamber of Commerce is that's great, but can we have a different dialogue about something a little bit bigger and bring us all together to talk about it, as opposed to I'll be in my fiefdom, you're in your fiefdom, you're in your fight, you're in the lawyer group.
Right. I don't want to be stuck over here. You guys are more fun. Come on.
That's awesome. Okay, I want to get to two more questions really quick. And one of them is actually, I'm going to gear it towards you to start. That's going to be the second one. But I do want to this one about cancel culture, which is kind of going along the same lines. But it's beyond race, it's beyond gender, it's just beyond everything. So the cancel culture is getting out of hand, even in the business world. This person I do not know. This was sent to me confidentially. It was texted from a number that I'm not going to trace. It seems that those who seek to cancel others believe that you are no better than your worst moment, no matter how young you were when you transgressed, even if it was an isolated incident. Is this really where we should be headed if we have different opinions? Should we be canceled or should we talk about it, even if you did something stupid? Should there be a modicum of grace, or is that you did it when you were 12, you're 55 now, you're going to be held accountable to it, you're out, which has happened recently. What do you guys think about that? Because it's coming into the business world gangbusters right now.
It is.
Even legally.
Big time.
We do mature, right? I mean, it's like...
Did you do something at 12 that you're sorry for?
Yes, but I don't want to be held accountable for it forever, right?
How do we deal with this?
It's challenging because I think a lot of us didn't realize when we were 12, and maybe some of us when we were 12, there wasn't all the technology tracing us out there forever on social media.
Picture, video,
all the technology.
Recording.
So the technology is actually hurting people, where now, 10 years ago when a lot of people were younger, it captures everything. And if social media sees that, unfortunately, I think it's unfair to that person that has matured and has progressed. But perception's reality. If they're going to lose millions of customers and they're going to get everyone hating them, the owners have to make a decision on how to protect jobs for people, and sometimes it's easier to fix a perception by separating someone than going through the work to educate that they've learned from that mistake and that doesn't reflect who they are. It's a very difficult thing. I think it's an unfortunate problem, but I think it's not as simple as saying give them a second chance. Sometimes if it's bad enough,
right,
you may have to separate yourself. If they're in a spotlight position where their brand is related to the public, you have to factor it in, unfortunately. Maybe not every company can afford not to.
Right, totally agree with that. Clean up your social media, everybody, right? Do it right now before it becomes a problem, because it can. And we work with a lot of young people, right? So we counsel them on that. Make sure that your social media is clean.
So here's
Just
the thing,
as a
though.
stepping stone, you're working here, but you're going to go into your professional job. It will be reviewed. We know that.
But if it was once out there, it's forever out there. You can't delete it. So what do you do in that situation?
So, by the way, Johnny Taylor of SHRM said, bring felons back to work. And that was a big theme, in 2018, 19, 20? So I think the second chance culture there's a place for it, But I think right now it's so hot to have that it's an unfortunate time for those people right now.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be that way forever.
Yeah, I think it's heightened because of everything that's going on right now, and I think it's unfair to some of the people probably deserved it. Let's face it, some of these people were probably just horrible people. I'm broad brushing. I could get in trouble for that. I get it, but I think some of these people were the poster child for what happens, and they really shouldn't have been in some instances. A few that I'm actually very aware of, and I think it's going to go away. And in a different environment, it probably wouldn't have happened to the extent that it is.
Right.
To your social media comment. It doesn't go away. There's, the Wayback Machine and all those other things that save literally everything. So if you got something from the past, if you're watching this, go out there and talk about what you did and apologize for what you did before somebody comes back and finds it.
That's right.
That's going to be an issue.
Yep.
But I do agree. I think in certain circumstances, like the bring felons back to work, and for something, if you're in an environment where you can take that risk, you can't.
No.
But in other environments, that risk can be taken. I think you serve your time. Within reason.
And you'll get loyalty and trust from that, appreciation from that employee.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, I want to end on a good note, positive note. Kind of a negative, but a positive note. And this last question here. Because I think it's important. I was just on a panel of women talking about how COVID has affected women. Think about it. So in some households, the woman decided to leave their career to stay home to take care of kids. Not in all, but in many. Or elderly parents or what have you. And it seems like there's been with all the progress that we've made over the last decade, there has been a step back. You and I talked about that a little bit as well. But Sharon, I'd love to get your thoughts on this too. What do we do to put women back to the forefront again, right? Because I think we got to do something to help those who had to take a step back for the right reasons, by the way. And sometimes we're the only person that could do it. What do we do for them?
We need to do a lot for them, right? Because we need them back in the workforce, right? There's millions of females at home taking care of their kids. So I think when they're ready to come back, they need to be embraced. They need to be put in a role that was similar to what they had. Maybe that role was filled, understood, business must go on. It does. But certainly provide them with an opportunity to get back on track. They shouldn't have to have a demotion, if you will, because they took care of their babies while they were home and understood. So that would be my advice to employers. Yeah. What can you do to get that person or those women back to the positions that they were in from a pay standpoint? Maybe not the same position. And what else can you do to make sure that they're ready? Maybe it's a job that they didn't do in the past, but they have the skill set for. How are you going to train them, get them ready for it? That's what employers need to do. You will have a reliable person, you will have a loyal person if you do that.
James, what are your thoughts?
I love your answer, but I think that from the, not to disagree, I think that there's more burden on companies and CEOs to make it more appropriate for sometimes the man to stay at home when the kid is working or at school remotely. Have a paternity leave policy where they can be the person watching the baby when there's a newborn or an adoption. So I feel like a lot of companies are starting to progress and not stereotype that only the woman should be the caregiver when there's an incident. So if we already had a better culture in that regard, there wouldn't just be millions of women out of work and the men are still coming into work. We got to fix it, I think, at the business side as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting perspective that I hadn't really paid attention to. I do think, so we're in the recruiting business, right? And one of the things that we get from our clients is, I don't want anybody who's been unemployed. This has been going on I've been in this for 30 years. We've heard it for 30 years. I don't want anybody who's been unemployed. And we've had to really educate some of our clients on, well, wait a minute. Yes, she has been unemployed since March of last year. Put it in the perspective of what's gone on since March of last year. Right. Yes, she lost her job because she had to stay home, or he lost his job because he had to stay home. It's primarily women. We've got to have some consideration for what's gone on. And I think we've got to change that mindset of if they're unemployed, then they were probably the first ones to go. That's not, they sometimes many instances, chose to be home given the circumstances that are out there. It's a switch that's got to shift. Otherwise, we'll never get women back to some of the roles that they were in, which is, in my opinion, a shame.
Agreed.
Totally. I was thinking the same word. Shame on them.
If we weren't in COVID, I'd high five you. I'm not going to hit you in the head or something. I'm not going to do that, Sharon. But look, guys, thank you for having the conversation again. James, as always. Sharon, thank you for
the invite.
For attending. If you've been watching this and you've got questions, I mean, there's almost no question our panel of whoever we have at that given time won't ask or won't answer.
Sure.
You may not always get the answer that you're looking for, and I think that's part of this whole thing. But thank you for that, James. There's an event coming up that I want to make sure we don't miss.
I would love for you to come in person. Actually, here on April 15th, we have a big conference room with a nice breakfast on April 15th from 8
to 9:30.
To 9:30.
Yep.
We're going to have at least 25 people in person. So the first 25 that are willing to come in person will socially distance, follow all the protocols, and then the rest of you after the first 25 can attend virtually. So we look forward to seeing you there. We got applied for strategic business credits. We have a great agenda and very needed right now.
Yeah.
And Steve and I are going to co-host a moderated panel, and we're also going to learn from each other on how you're dealing with some of the issues on our top 5 topics in legal and leadership live on April 15th.
Yeah, we're calling it Leadership and Legal Live Breakfast Briefing.
Breakfast briefing.
And thank you to Dinsmore, your law firm, for helping us get this thing out there. So if you're a senior HR leader, if you're a senior business leader and you want to be one of the first 25, make sure you send us a text, an email, reach out to us right away. We will have a registration page. It might even be up already, but we'll direct you there. Just shoot one of us a text. James, your cell number again?
734-649-LUCKY1313.
Mine's 734-837-8500. I will not make you put your cell phone. That's just for what we're doing. But as things kind of loosen up, we will be appropriately social distance, and it's a great opportunity to have some real in-depth conversation. Everybody learn from each other, and let's face it, we need to get out there and start networking appropriately, bringing together experts who can help each other and go from there. So,
thanks for your time.
Any final closing thoughts? Since we started late, we got about 2 minutes.
My final question to Sharon is, one, how could the people reach you? What is the best way to reach you or your company to explore synergies?
Yeah.
And then final 2 is, do you have any perspective that you don't think we shared or captured today that the listeners may want to hear?
Okay. So I will give one number.
You may.
And that's the office number, and it's 734-761-8393. Reach out if we can help your family, help your business. We would be more than happy to do that. And the second question, James, was,
you are the first woman on the show.
Yes.
But you also have different points of view on certain topics than maybe we do. Is there any question that wasn't asked of you or any perspective on anything going on that you see that maybe the audience would like to understand, an issue you see or a perspective that you have for us all to learn?
I think as we continue to open up, there are going to be more questions about, going back to work, how should we handle that when folks are uncomfortable. So I would love to see more dialogue around that because I think that's going to come up.
Will you talk about it? We have you back on?
Oh, I will.
You opened the door. I just walked through at that particular point. I think that'd be great that is something that we've talked about a couple of times, but we're getting to the point now where people are starting to slowly go back based on the restrictions and all that. It's going to become a bigger and bigger issue.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you for watching Leadership and Legal Live. James, Sharon, thank you for your time again. Thank you for coming out and seeing this. If you're watching this recorded and you want to be on one of our shows, send me a message, send James a message. We'll have a conversation with you. Just be prepared to kind of open up, right? This is not all legal stuff. Part of this is kind of opinion and experience and so on. So thank you again. We'll see you guys next time.
See you next time.
Bye.